Okay.
Andrew, oh, one moment. I'm on a phone call. It's pretty important. Thank you, sir.
Take the number. Take it.
All right, one moment.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can see why it's difficult to do this in public, and also why it's probably not appropriate to talk about most of the subject matter. Wait till you get to your car. No, I'm good. I'm just making sure that I get the phone closer to my speaker and get my face closer to that so I can hear everything. But this is an issue literally everywhere I go, so it's difficult for me to process anything with that constantly going on. There's a few things I'm going to say that aren't going to have anything to do with your situation, and a few things that might hit home. It all depends on what you got going on in your own life, which obviously is not my business. But one of the situations with the police railroading me in court is when I went to people, I had a lot of people that told me that that my stuff was safe with them, that they would keep it safe. The problem is it needed to be turned in, and many of those people ended up stealing it by illegal or improper means, or they threw tantrums because I told the truth about their situation. One of the reasons for that is because I had a lot of people that we're gonna, and then they never came forward and never tried to come forward with what they knew, never came forward with me, never made calls. And I got a lot of the stuff that I had just shows that people who were offering to help me that I didn't even know were going at each other's throats and threatening to kill each other. And then they were telling me that people were threatening to kill them. And I mean, obviously, that's something that's gonna. Right, Sean, you've told me all of this before. Why are you telling me again? Because I wanted to make sure that I got it recorded. Um, it's also because of the importance of making sure that it's saved. The reason for this, and that's what I'm trying to explain to you. Um, and it's difficult. I have to take a breath and recollect myself from the interruptions because of the background noise. I do apologize. The police claimed that I didn't try to get help. The stuff that I have to show, it shows that people claimed that they were trying to help and wanted to help, but were sick, their children were sick, they had cancer, they got the flu, people were beating them up, they were being threatened and harassed by the police, people were threatening to kill them and their families, and the police said that I didn't try to get help and that people wouldn't help me probably because of the way that I acted. Now, what I'm dealing with all right now is that I still have the evidence of that. These people could have easily come forward, and with all of them, they didn't understand the importance of the things that they were telling me that cut them off from being able to do a lot of stuff to help me. The courts, if they're not told those things, if they're not informed of those things, if the officers that are supposed to investigate it and people like that aren't informed of those things, and they can sell whatever narrative they want, especially if it's not on paper and in court, which is one of the things about trying to show what I can in public, but also keep people's information private. Not have to, post up on the internet that people that were going to help me didn't end up going with me because they ended up getting, a broken foot or their kid got beat up at school, and then I had to go in alone in order to make the appointment because if I didn't make the appointment, I was going to get treated like I wasn't trying. Or, of course, with some of these people, they were going to go in with me, and then once we got there, they were afraid to go in because they had their kids. So it's important with stuff like that that I at least keep a note of why people aren't able to do stuff. Also, there's a lot of people that their trauma that they endured was a major roadblock. Also, with a lot of these gaslighters, they pretended to be people who are disabled or autistic or deaf, or they could only text or things like that. And that's one of the things about the police saying, even writing down in court that I wasn't trying to get help. In every one of those situations, I was trying to turn in predators who were harming me, every single one of them. And by those people making me go in alone, because the instructions for me were very clear. Go to friends or family and make sure that you record it, and go to the police and make sure that you record that. If they blow you off or brush you off, you're a disabled person and it's against the law for them to do that. But if it's just your word versus theirs, they're going to win every time. I've been explaining that since before Natalie was killed, because I've been trying to get a hold of lawyers since before that. Almost all of the lawyers that I spoke with told me that I needed to call them back when I had a friend or family member. They expected it would take a day or two, maybe at most, but it didn't. It's literally taking me 6 years to get someone to actually call a lawyer with me and tell them what's going on. So I was just making sure that I let you know that. And thank you very much. When you're not able to make appointments, you understand how hurtful it is and how scary it is when those appointments aren't met, because I do have to set all of the equipment up in order to be able to record it, and I also have to take it down. So I'm thankful and grateful for that. And like this morning when you weren't able to get a hold of me, that happens. That's not a bad thing. You're not evil for that. And if it was a real big major thing, I would have texted you this morning. I figured you needed some sleep. So the thing is, a lot of the stuff that I might talk about that might hit home with your situation or somebody else that you know's situation. In most of those cases, I'm not talking about any of your situation. I'm talking about the overall quantity of people that this has happened to, that were trying to help me. The roadblocks that they had are what prevented a lot of the help that I needed. And for the police to say that none of those people did anything, that I wasn't trying to get help, and to literally get to ignore hundreds of people that were offering to help and all of the things that were done to cut me off from that help, um, is devastating. So a lot of people, they want to keep their personal business private, and I do understand that. I understand that, like with Peaches, her back issues, that she didn't want everybody to know that she'd had surgery and all that stuff. It wasn't everybody's business. But the other thing is that that was also something that prevented her from being able to help me when I went to her for help. That delay was able to be just enough for everything that happened with Natalie to happen. Now, that doesn't make her a bad person, but she didn't want to speak up about that's really the situation, because the way that she looked at it, that was paramount to blaming her for what happened to Natalie. And it wasn't. It was a lot of situations like that. A lot of people who were sick before Natalie was died, or Natalie was killed. A lot of people who, the night that I called them, it just so happened that it was a night that they were drinking with their friends or something like that, and they were angry that I interrupted their drinking. It's a lot of just stupid little things. And of course, people's personal problems are a major issue with me, not because I think that it's bad for people to have them, but because if they don't come forward about those problems that are also preventing me from getting the help, it's not a personal insult to them. It's not saying that they're a bad person because they have personal problems. And many of these people, when I asked them to come forward about it, instead of understanding, what they said is, stop blaming me, don't blame me, it's not my fault, things like that. And it's not a blame thing. It's the fact that I did tell the truth about what was going on, and also people's reasons, people's sicknesses and illnesses, the people who are threatening their lives, things of that nature. I don't believe in keeping secrets. I believe in complete and total transparency, and that's one of the things that I wanted you to know when I'm saying that stuff. It's not ever about you or anything that you might be going through. You do keep in contact with me. With a lot of people, they told me that they wouldn't, ignore me, that they'd take a look at things, and then they ignored me for weeks at a time. Told me that if I texted them or messaged them or called them, that they would call me back, and ignored me for weeks at a time. You haven't done that. When I'm explaining that to you, that's absolutely not about you. And I don't want you to feel guilty at all, like you have done something wrong because you texted me a couple hours later. I mean, we were both aware of that. You had informed me last night about that, so you are completely good. And I want to thank you for everything that you've done. I mean, a lot of people tried throwing money and pretty words at me and then ignoring me, and I want to thank you for taking the time to listen even when I'm rambling and having a severe panic attack, and also for making the calls and for being okay with recording the calls with me. That's the most important thing. That's something that I explain to everybody, is that it has to be recorded, and the fact that you're okay with that is really cool. So I wanted to thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so was that longer than 5 minutes? I think it was. I think I went almost 11 minutes.
That's okay. Sean, are you having a crisis right now? Do you need help right now? Are you having?
Well, I was having a lot of anxiety. I always am when I'm stuck in public, just because I'm afraid of, well, things that I've got recorded happening repeatedly. When I'm stuck in public, as well as the noise thing, and also the fact that I've been talked to about hanging out before. It does shut me down. So that happens no matter what. Um, that's one of the things about having a safe environment immediately. And also one of the things about, like, for example, with Mandy Singer, with her being in public housing, um, she couldn't let me stay there for very long. And it wasn't that she didn't want to. She actually cried about not being able to allow me to stay there. She was afraid of getting kicked out if she let me stay there, or even if I visited too much. And also, all of her personal problems came in like a flood all at once, so she wasn't able to help me because of that. If she hadn't done everything that she did, her grandkids would have gotten taken away because they weren't in daycare. And there was also a shooting by the police there in McCook, and she was scared to go to the police there. I ended up having to go alone. So there's a lot of stuff where if I seem like I'm kind of aloof about it or quiet about it, it's just because it's something that does trigger me, because I remember in the past how people not coming forward about that stuff allowed the police to sell whatever narrative they wanted in court. The anxiety I'm having now is because we weren't able to do what we were going to do today, and also about the fact that there's really so much of it. Um, but I also, like I said, I understand when people aren't able to do something or aren't able to keep an appointment, especially if they do let me know, or if we, like yesterday, we did have it understood ahead of time that it was a maybe. So that's all right. Um, it's more so a situation where if I'm immediately abused, that I have to be able to trust that I can get a hold of you, and I do believe that if I was in immediate danger and called you, that you would help me. And that's the most important. That's the thing with all these people that wanted me to trust them, is that most of them, I called them immediately after being assaulted or immediately after having my life threatened, like the instructions say to do, and instead they were too busy for years. All right. So
Whenever you can come here, you know how to get in. So
yes, ma'am. If it's an extreme and emergency, I will. I know you were talking about how you. Um, well, I don't want to talk about your situation, obviously, when it's recorded. So I just want to make sure we keep it within the rules so that you don't get in trouble. Kind of like the situation with Mandy not getting in trouble, or a lot of other people not getting in trouble for helping. It's horrible that they had to be afraid of that just for helping. But all right.
but if there's an emergency, you know what I'm saying, you can't get a hold of me, just come here.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I certainly will. And thank you very much. All right. So I guess we're going to plan for hopefully maybe tomorrow afternoon, right?
Right. It'll just depend. It's supposed to not be a big deal, so we'll see.
Yes, ma'am. I all the calls that you made to the hospital with me, that was a lot of calls. It's nice that you were aware it was going to take that. I mean, most people, they make one call and they say, oh, well, they said this. and that's the end of it. At least you understand the process. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we'll keep making them.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Well, be safe, and if I have an emergency, I'll text you. I'm gonna try to go through as much as I can. You saw how long it took me, like 4 hours to scroll through just for that one video that you asked for. That was a lot of work just to dig through to find that.
I'm
Um,
sorry. I'm very sorry. I know that's.
oh, you're not in any need to be sorry. That's something that's necessary, but it's also something that those do need to be brought up in court, because for me to have to chase people down to try to get this done is horrible, and it's horrible that there's a lot of people who are trying to do the police's job because they didn't do it to begin with.
I understand.
All right, I guess I'm gonna let you go. Be safe, and I'll send stuff to your email the best that I can. If I do send it through the phone on accident another way, I do apologize. I'm not doing it on purpose. It's just that's an easier way for me to do it most of the time when I'm in my car.
I understand.
All right, be safe.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Oh, crap. There I go. All right, so that was about. We called the hospital to try to turn in one of the assaults and also turn in the protocol issues. I was sent to the hospital because they're supposed to call a social worker immediately and have a social worker on hand. They never did get a hold of the social worker in either of the situations at the hospital. They sent me to TFCC instead, and that is against protocol. When somebody is trying to turn in abuse against them, the entirely wrong protocol is to send them to mental health. They're being abused. Social services needs to get involved immediately, and the police need to get involved immediately. Unfortunately, when the police are involved in, well, things that Tillamook has done, it makes it complicated and it makes it scary. And that's something that they prey on. They go, oh, well, it's a civil matter, and you have to have money to fight a civil matter.